Welcome to another podcast episode. Today we are diving deep into the world of sustainable energy solutions. Our spotlight is on Matt Miller, Sales and Marketing Manager at Commodore Australia. Join us as we unfold the story of Matt, who as a key player in the design team crafted an ingenious off-grid solar systems for Commodore Australia. Matt's journey is one of innovation, determination, and the potential of transformative technology. As a vital contributor to this venture, he's helping to actively shape a future powered by clean energy.
Hey guys, welcome everyone. Today we're actually talking with Matt from Commodore Australia. So Matt, tell us a bit about yourself.
Mike, thank you for having me on, mate. It's always good chatting with you, whether it's over the phone, in person, or whatever else there is, pretty much. So I basically design a fair few off-grid systems here at Commodore. I'm a part of the design team here. We are based in Shepparton. We have a Queensland office as well, and we have about 50 of us running around now. We have a few different spots here in Shepparton, and we have Raleigh up in Queensland. So we basically just off grid. We don't do no to straight grid connect solar, like what you see all rolling through a few towns. We basically specialise in pre-wired off grid systems like cabinets, pre-wired boards for like inside sheds. Then even like a bit of cool commercial work. So for like Rio Tinto and a fair few other sort of commercial organisations, particularly mining, construction, where there's actually, we'll chat about it soon, but there's like a heap of demand there for moving away from diesel jennies. Not just like for, it definitely used to be sort of like, I think the perception is like that of going green, but the return on investment of actually going off grid for these guys it's wicked. Like especially when you're sort of comparing $2 a litre or $1.70 a litre diesel, going out there servicing every 250 hours EDC, like, yeah, we'll jump into that soon anyway.
Yeah, it's one. I think people don't really realise how much mining companies do R&D and for all this sort of stuff, because it's in the downtime is a huge big thing with mining companies. I've been involved in a lot of mining projects over the years, and the downtime is what really kills them. Because if they're not pulling things out of the ground and machines not running, they got staff standing around that they're paying. So there's all that sort of stuff that comes into consideration, and and there's the other thing is the bottom line for dollars as well for a lot of mining companies to make them more profitable. So a lot of fun stuff.
It's just interesting to see, like, obviously as you listen to your podcast throughout all the episodes, especially with a few of the first ones, like guys have been going off grid for years now. Like it's not a new concept, but it's pretty cool to see residential Australia ahead of the ball game in terms compared to some of commercial Australia in a sense too. Pretty cool.
Yep. No, totally. So off grid's definitely changed a lot in the last 40 years. So yeah. So,
even compared to your first system back in Sydney.
Totally. Oh yeah. We're doing it at the moment. We're going back. We found a heap of old footage, and we're doing a lot of stuff at the moment to go back to look at that system that I did for the first time and how I was thinking about it, and how I would do it different. And it's funny. It's interesting to look back on things, 10 years later and see, okay, what would I have done different back then? So,
even the design of that system, like how did you sort of go out the design of that system back in, when was it, 2011?
2013 is when we installed the system. That's when we flicked the switch. And so I suppose we're getting to this, and I'll ask you in a minute, like, what does off-grid mean to you? And it's one of those things, like to me, I looked at it all, and at the time, I was wanting to be off-grid and be self-sufficient, because everyone that was I was involved in said, look, get off the grid, it's a bad thing, and I've completely done a backflip on that, how I think about the grid these days. But mate, so when we installed that system, when we designed it, we were on a budget, at the time. It was a really small system. We didn't have a huge amount of roof space. So I spent a lot of time. It was a really good learning lesson, because I was doing caravan motorhome solar, designing that, which is a challenge in itself, because everyone wants to take everything, including the kitchen sink, away with them. And that's back
in this little area. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is back, I started that business in 2009 or something like that. Maybe a bit before that. And you didn't have the roof space for solar. You're dealing with lead acid batteries back then. And we also didn't have the energy efficiency technology that we've got these days, like induction cooktops, little turbo ovens, and energy efficient aircon. So yeah, the industry's come a long way. So since back then. So yeah, for me, going off grid back in the day, and even my thing these days is more about, I just want to be self-sufficient. I want to create more energy than what I use. So yeah.
I was going to say that's probably the exact same thing that I would say. Like, what is off grid, and it's really just like being as self-sufficient as you can.
Yeah.
Really. And I'm saying, look, it's very difficult to do absolutely 100%. But it's doing everything that you can to live off grid and to actually like provide for yourself. Like, I think we're on similar opinion now, and I think a lot of people in the industry are, that the grid, it doesn't need to be your absolute enemy. I mean, if you got a case where you're 500 meters from the pole, 400 meters from the pole, it's going to cost you a fortune to run mains there. Then that's when a diesel genie can make sense for a backup. But if you're like in town and wanting to create your own power and live off grid, then a hybrid system with the grid there completely makes sense.
Yep. No, totally. Yeah. For me, that, you know, there's this on your website, you know, there's a really good, just when someone's really looking into, on your residential system, it's great. I'll just share this and we'll just talk through this here. You know, this is really one of the biggest things that changed me, and the people to really understand that when you are off grid, your panels turn off. So you actually, you know, it's use it or lose it when you're off grid. You don't access that power. And so when your battery bank's full, your panels will turn off. And that's staying connected to the grid if you're in town. That was a big thing for me that I did a backflip on, because I really could understand I could share my abundance of energy. And, you know, I've got a 25 kilowatts of panels on the roof, and I can feed 20 kilowatts back to the grid. And, you know, in summer, most days we send about 18 kilowatt hours back to the grid all day, every day. So there's at least 10 or 15 houses in my street, like it or not, they live on solar.
They don't have a choice.
They don't. Yeah. Not when Mike Hayden's around. And yeah, like if I was off grid, that energy would just go to waste. And so like and for me, like in winter, we don't do that. Like in winter, we feed zero back to the grid all winter. We really struggle in winter because we're shading, we're on the south side of a hill, big trees and stuff around the middle of town. So I had to put that big 25 kilowatt solar system up to get me through winter, to be self-sufficient in winter. So yeah, and in summer, all that abundance energy. So I think when people want to go off the grid and hate the grid and that real angst grid, don't really realize that, well, you lose all that excess power that you could be sharing with, you know, the community and making a bigger difference in the network.
Couldn't agree more, man. Like, and especially there's definitely cases where you can't have the grid there. And that's not the end of the world either. Like, there's cases where it makes a lot of sense to have a different backup power source to feed the batteries in those winter months. Like, depending on access to site. Like, if you're up in the mountains and you're struggling to get a car up there, you're probably going to struggle to run a power line up there too.
Yep.
There's cases like that. But yeah, I mean, if you're in town and you're looking to go back to the definition of what we're talking about, what we believe is off grid and living self-sufficiently, that, and you're able to do it sort of 80 or 90% of the time, that's super.
Yep. No, totally. Yeah. I think if, you know, there's when we took our house off grid in Sydney for water, something I really had to have a conversation with myself and sit down and go, right, you know, you just can't do this. And I suppose it was really that it got me thinking about, well, I couldn't be completely self-sufficient for water. If I did, I had to put a 50,000 litre water tank in the backyard, because we had periods in Seven Hills in Sydney where it didn't rain for months and months on end. So, and, you know, as a household, we weren't very heavy using water, but we grew a lot of our own food. So we used a lot of water for that there. So that conversation I had with myself is like, well, look, for 9 months of the year on a 10,000 litre water tank, we can be self-sufficient. So, you know, it was just about going, well, you know, for 9 months of the year, completely self-sufficient for water. 3 months of the year, I'm just going to buy that water from the network, rather than sacrifice all that yard space in my backyard for 3 months for water. And I would actually have lost the ability to grow all my own food, which was like, well, growing the food's a probably better solution than, you know, wanting to be completely off grid and self-sufficient for everything.
And that's pretty cool. Like, I mean, being able to do all that in Metro Sydney in your case, that's pretty cool. You know,
yeah, it's fun. So we used to open the house up. Council used to come around, and they used to bring busloads of people around all the time and show off the house and what we'd done. And yeah, so
Yeah,
It was
cool. Very
good fun. So cool. Well, mate. So I think you've got something really cool on your website I want to share with everyone. I think it's
Yeah,
something
look, it's just
anyone
about
that's looking to go off grid. So I wish I had this back when I did mine back in 2013. So if you want to talk everyone through this and you tell them what it's about this off-grid calculator and how they can use it to design their off-grid solar system.
Yeah, so this is a little tool we made, would have been a couple of years ago, probably started it about 3 years ago. Like, it doesn't look like much, but it took ages to make. There's a fair bit that sort of goes into the back end. But basically what it is just a really simple way to get an idea of like exactly what you need for your power system. It's called our off-grid calculator. And basically, if you go through your house, what you want to do, basically to design an off-grid system, you need to know what you're going to run and how you're going to use it. So it covers both here. The first step here is basically going through and clicking all the appliances which apply to you. There's a couple of things where you customize it based on the house. For example, like the ducted air conditioner, the large air conditioner, you can look at the specific specs. But generally speaking, like the large aircon's basically like a 7 kilowatt aircon. The small is like a 3. And it's sort of like estimated figures there. And then based on your specific one, you customize it. But basically going through and supply, okay, I'm building a new home or I'm going to take my current home off grid. What am I using at the moment? Sort of thing. And you go through and click all of that through the general house, the kitchen, through the office, etc. And you can add in like custom appliances. Say if you have like a workshop or some appliances that sort of aren't applicable or also aren't included on here, then you add in sort of your own custom one. As long as you have an idea of how much power it's using, then you're able to punch that in. So if you click custom appliance, Mike, and scroll down a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So then it sort of lets you type in your own appliance there.
Cool.
Say for example, what have I got sort of funky out of the blue?
I had a spa bath this week.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah, I've quite a few spa baths, and my first ever headache, I'm going to call it, when I took a house off grid in Sydney for the first time. We had all these dramas, all these issues with batteries being flat, and back then, mate, the Victron color screen was like $2,000, and we hardly ever used it because it was so expensive, And anyway, long story short, after 3 or 4 days, I said to the customer, "Look, you're paying for this control. If I'm wrong, I will pay for it. But if I've found out you're using more energy and what we discussed and designed in the thing, here you go. We'll put this. You cover the cost of the screen." But anyway, we installed literally the day we installed. I was walking out the back and I heard this blah, 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 blah. I was like, "What's that out there under that?" She's like, "Oh, that's my spa bath for 8 people." I'm like, "You never ever told me about that." She's like, "Why would I need to?"
Yeah, that's probably sums up exactly why you need to do this.
So
it probably hits the nail on the head on why you need to, like, whether it's using a calculator this or whether it's come up with your own Excel spreadsheet. This is probably your quickest and easiest way to go about it.
Yeah.
Because then there's two different numbers you get at the end of it. If you scroll down, Mike, just down at the bottom. Once you go through and customize how many hours per day you run it for, and if you want to change the wattage of the appliance, you do that. There's 2 key things we look for from here. So with any off-grid system, what we're trying to achieve at the end of the day is find out, firstly, if you were to flick everything on at once and it was drawing maximum power, we want to know that, because that's basically that indicates what size inverter you need. And that's that potential load figure.
Yep, so 19.55.
Yep. So if you were to flick everything at once, in saying that, your house is never going to be like, you're never going to be running every appliance at full input or at full speed, pretty much.
Yeah, full load.
To be able to do that, imagine it, Mike, if you're literally running around the house like, kettle, dryer, like you'd be running around with it.
Today for us, we actually, and this is another thing with the network for us. So today I'll put a picture up and show it in the corner here. So the energy in the grid right now is -4 cents. So my wife literally is plugged the electric car in. She's got the pyrolytic cleaner in the oven going. The dry'd be cranking. She's turning anything and everything on because we're getting paid right now to use energy from the grid. Our batteries will be charging flat out in the house, and we're getting paid to buy energy from the grid, which is pretty crazy. It's another story for another day, but
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, so can't really do that off grid.
No, you can't. No, but I mean, like, just to get an idea of, like, if you're gonna flick everything on at once, you need to get an idea with the whole sum of it. we then basically allows us to figure out what size inverter do you need. Because one of the biggest traps of going off grid is having an inverter that won't do the job. That's too small. That's one of the that's like the worst nightmare, because if you can't flip, say for example, you have like a 3 kVA inverter, but you want to run, say, like kettle, electric oven, and a couple of other things at the same time, you're going to have some major issues. Like that's a big one there. So being able to actually do the numbers here, think long and hard about what you do want to run in your home, whether you're building a new one or whether you have one currently that you're taking off grid. Have a good think about that, because that's going to make a big difference when it comes down to the design of the system as to what inverter you use. The second part of this is figuring out how long and how much you're going to use your appliances for. So this is going to be a really interesting load profile actually, Mike, because we've got 40.39 as the expected consumption, using 50% appliances at once as well. So what that's saying is, over the course of a day, we're expecting that this person here is going to be using about 40 kilowatt hours a day. And if we go back up, that spa bath is a major contributor. I think that was down for 8 hours.
Yeah, 5 hours. I changed it to 5 because it was so big.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, that's
18 kilowatt hours a day.
Yep. So looking at that, you get, so really at the very minimum, you want to have like a day, realistically like a full day of battery backup if you're going fully off grid, just for the winter months. So that way you're not going to go and run the generator flat out in poor sunlight, or unless you have an absolute ton of solar coming in. There's a couple of ways you can go about it, but general rule of thumb, like if you're using 40, you want to have 40 kilowatt hours of battery there, just so you're topped up.
Yep.
Unless you have a huge amount of solar sort of coming in constantly, sort of thing. But yeah, that's basically the idea of this calculator. So then you're not going in blind. You have a good idea of this, like that. Yeah, you're going to be around that 40 kilowatt hours of battery with, say, a 10 kVA inverter or similar. Just so you can have a good idea of what you're actually going to be doing, rather than going in thinking, oh, I think I need this, I think I need that, because there's nothing worse, I don't think, Mike, than going off grid and not having enough power, or then just kicking yourself for spending 20 or 30 grand too much.
Yep.
Because something that can be prevented, for one, and two, it's a big life change. Like if you're going off grid for the first time.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, I suppose, for me, that the whole point of building the educational platform with the off-grid tribe and really wanting to educate people to help people make that right decision, but people don't realize that. They might think, oh, the off-grid course is quite expensive, but people don't realize how much money they can save when they're educated. And what I've learned as well over the years, that installers treat people very different that are educated. If someone knows what they're talking about, and especially off-grid, because, I have a thing I called ID10 tax, which is idiot tax. If you write ID10 on a paper. And look, I see a lot of installers deal with customers in that way if they think they're uneducated, or because they don't want to get the phone calls and deal with people saying, I'm out of power, this and that. And most installers don't want to deal with that educational process. They're like, right, extra 50 grand worth of batteries, inverter 5 times bigger than we ever need. I'll never hear from them, and that's why a lot of people get quotes for $160,000, $170,000 systems, where they could have got away with a $50,000, $60,000 system with the right knowledge and education.
Yeah, you couldn't say it much better. Like, it's so important. Like, when you're going off grid, you need to know. You need to go and see like a few people. Go and see, like, or if you know anyone who has gone off grid, chat to them at length as to how they designed their system, how their system went, like what are the shortfalls of their system, their first system, because I'm sure they probably had it going back 10, 15 years ago when these sort of things didn't exist. It's bound to happen. So if you want to educate yourself as best as possible, then at least you can make, one, you can save yourself a lot of money, but then two, you can know that you're going to live comfortably off grid as well. If you're aiming to, if your goal is, which is definitely doable now, if your goal is to live off grid and feel as though it's completely on grid, then you want to make sure that you run the numbers for sure. Yep,
totally. Yeah, we actually, because me and the girls have been going through a whole heap of old stuff, and I actually wrote a book back in 2012, and it was called Going Off Grid Without the Sacrifices. And Yeah, it'd be interesting how different I'd write that book today. Of because my whole intention was when I first got involved in off grid, and I went and worked with a couple of guys, and there's a couple of different solar businesses that I wasn't getting paid. I just volunteered my time because I really wanted to learn and understand this stuff. And I went and spent time learning how to do installations with these guys. So I went out doing installs, and I spent like 2 years on the tools, just learning from them. And one of the things for me that I really noticed back in the day, learning from these guys, it was like there was all these little mini things and systems that reminded me of the castle. You have to do this to be able to do that, and then do this to do that. And it was just all this, to get these lights to come on, you got to push this button over here and then turn this generator on. I was like, this is not going to, the masses are not going to take this on, and we're not going to make a huge difference and an impact on the world if this is how everyone has to go living off grid. It wasn't. So that for me, it was about, right, how can you do this without having to do 20 different things to get your lights to come on? And that's why I wrote the book about, going off grid without the sacrifices. So.
And the K word, the kettle, like, yes, you can. I think that's one that, like, we do here, whether you're in Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales, WA, or like wherever. It's like some of the guys who say, for example, they've had a system 15 years, and now you say, look, there's literally like the ability out there to run as many kettles as you like there.
Yep.
One sounds good, let alone like however many.
Yeah. These days you're limited by budget. The technology has come so far. You can do whatever you want with the money you got. And I suppose that's the other thing as well that I'm really passionate about, and why, I suppose on the podcast we've been talking to a lot of people is about how the houses are built, what materials the houses are built. Because if you can remove any need to heat or cool a house, it's a smaller solar system, or you can do so much, more useful things. But have your spa bath, or have you guys had many customers that have got electric cars off grid?
Yes. Yeah, it's starting to become a thing. And then definitely, actually, I probably am keen to touch on that, because just even knowing, like going through the preparation, doing that load profile, and say, if someone's going to go and get an electric car in 6 months' time, we want to look at the different ways we're actually going to use solar. So whether it's AC coupled or DC coupled, and it's pretty important to actually know the differences between it, because especially when you're looking at a larger system, a blend of both is really good. So say, for example, someone's got an electric car. They have one at the moment, or they're going to get one in 6 months' time. If we know they're going to be at home for, say, a couple of hours throughout the middle of the day, or they work from home, it makes a lot of sense to have solar basically coming from the, say, like from the solar straight down into like a Fronius or an AC coupled solar inverter, 240 volt, and run straight into your loads. That's basically the way it works in short form. Whereas like another type of solar, DC coupled, is going from your solar through into like an MPPT solar charge controller. So it's still at 48 volts, going straight into your battery from there. Yeah. That's not as efficient going to your loads, and it'll mean that your battery inverter it's using up a bit of that as well. So if we know you're going to have an electric car, it makes so much sense to just go solar, inverter, loads, and then any excess power back through into the batteries the long way. It's definitely doable now, but it's just about looking at the ways of, and planning for it, like looking at the ways in which they're going to use it for a start, how they're going to charge it, like what times a day, and then just figure out a way on how we can effectively sort of mix it in.
Yep. Yeah, so if anyone really wants to learn and understand about an AC coupled inverter, there's a good video which we'll link on the podcast link that I've got on my YouTube channel, which is, I actually call it, it's basically a grid connected inverter and how to use it off grid, because that's all we're basically doing is using a grid connected inverter off grid. I know you guys like to use the Fronius, and we use the FEMA.
Yeah, both good brands. They're the same task there. Yeah,
yep, that's it. So, but yeah, it's just a lot more efficient. And that's one of the big things for me, like even being involved in the industry, in 2013, we had a 3 kilowatt system with 12 kilowatt hours of batteries. And then we moved to Lismore and we did this house. We put a 13 kilowatt system up, and I think we had 12 kilowatt hours of batteries again. I thought, I'm fine. I'm good to go. I'm done for another 10 years. And I bought an electric car, didn't I?
And an orange one too.
Yeah. So I literally had to double everything and go at it again. I literally removed everything and put a whole new system up. And that was like within 2 years, less than 2 years I did that.
Were they lead acids at the time as well?
No, we used our first batteries were nickel-ion batteries.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So, nickel-ion batteries were our first set of batteries that we had. We have had lead acid in here over the years. And look, for me, people always ask me, like, what sort of batteries do you have, Mike? And my answer is pretty simple. It's like whatever batteries I got for free that week. I do a lot of R&D. And mate, this house here, since the second system, since we put the 25 kilowatt system up, I have never, ever paid for a set of batteries that run this house. So, and there's been moments where I'm like, oh, I've got to give these back to a supplier because the R&D test is finished. And then all of a sudden someone says, hey, Mike, I really need someone to test these batteries. So there was
the testing yard.
That's it. Was it last Christmas? I think it was last Christmas because we had the floods and that sort of stuff. And I thought I had been in contact with everyone and sort of been underground for a while. And yeah, I literally was about to hand a set of batteries back just before the Christmas holidays, thinking, I'm going to be over the holidays, have no batteries. And someone called me like early December saying, Mike, can you test a set of batteries? I was like, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Opportunity just opened up.
Unbelievable.
So it worked out well. So I've actually got some sodium ion batteries here at the house at the moment, which are very fun technology. And so they keep the lights on and we're getting out of the batteries what they're promised. So yeah.
That's a good start.
So far, so good. Yeah, it is. So it is. So
very good. I mean, it's
awesome.
like definitely changed a lot now. I'm not too familiar with the sodium ions yet, but like even with lithium, like in the sense of being able to go, say if you do add on an electric car in 2 years' time and you're gonna need more storage, then actually be able to go and add it on, like compared to your traditional type of batteries, where you're probably a little bit stuck and you can actually risk the new batteries coming down to a similar sort of state of health to the old ones with that sort of problem. But now actually being able to just go and add another battery on is pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that changed.
What's the go there?
What was that?
Is that the same as the new sodiums? Or yeah, cool. Yeah. That's a really cool thing.
Totally, and mate, I'm even more excited. The ones we have at the moment, they're fully the test samples. These will never be sold commercially, but the commercial grade battery, it literally will be competing against, a Pylon Tech, a Power Plus for same space, same storage in a rack mount battery. So it'd be exciting. So, like the boxes that you guys do and that we do these days, we'll be able to replace that with sodium ion batteries for like and have more of a sustainable battery in there. So
yeah, cool.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah, and continuing that sort of trend of being able to actually expand makes off-grid so much easier. Like going back to making like off-grid easier, that's one of the biggest things, where if you're starting off with this and your budget is this, but then actually being able to go on and add to it as your needs grow. For example, start a family, like you go out in the electric car, you add a workshop, like whatever it is, being able to sort of keep going on to that. That's one of the chatting to guys like all around the country who, when you say, look, you actually can add on now as you go, they're mind blown because it makes such a difference to their every day to day sort of thing.
Yep. Even for us, we've done so many systems where literally we might have just sold one battery, filled the roof full of panels. The customer's only going there once every 3 months at the moment. And then when the battery's inverter up, and then over time they just keep buying a battery every couple of months and adding another battery until they're ready to move into the property. Because a lot of off-grid properties, the land's brought, sheds put up, solar's put on, and then you're waiting for builders and DAs and all that other fun stuff to happen before you can move in and do stuff. So having that ability to put as minimum batteries in, you don't have to buy, because back in the day you'd be more about more batteries and less solar panels, and then you'd add panels over the time, but people wouldn't add panels and they wouldn't charge properly, and you'd end up with dead lead acid batteries. And well,
let's look at the price of panels. Like, 20 years ago to now, like I think that's where a lot of designs have changed, because like especially those two things, like firstly, as we're touching on, be able to expand as you go, and the second one is like the price of a panel now. What's like a 400 and something watt panel is going to be like around the $300 to $400 mark, depending on the panel. Whereas 20 years ago, like an 80 watt panel was going to be well over $500. Like,
I've got some uni solar panels, and they're 40 watts, and the customers paid $840 like 30 years ago. So, and $840 30 years ago is very different to what $800 is these days.
Yeah, I know. Like, what's inflation now?
I know. I was with the kids the other night trying to work out. I had my first job when I was 5, and I was working out what with $5 because I used to make $5 for 2 hours. This job I used to work at, and you're trying to work out the inflation and like $2.50 an hour back then is worth like $8 an hour today.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking. So that only would have been like about 15, 20 years ago, right?
No, mate. Geez, that's 37 years ago now. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But even like going back to that panel, like a 40-watt panel, what heavy dollars today? Sort of like $800.
It was $840 or something. Yeah, they paid for the panels. They had two. So,
all right. Imagine trying to charge your electric car.
Oh, well, yeah, mate. Yeah, and you can see that's why people went gas and generators and lots of things like that back in the day because it was just so expensive to be able to do it. We used to have a girl that worked for us. Her mum, when she was growing up, they had a 12-volt battery, and literally she would take it to work and charge it and bring it home and plug it in at home. And that's run the lights and fridges and stuff overnight from the 12-volt battery. So,
yeah, that's crazy. And now, like you see a lot of new builds now. I think I'd say it's literally growing probably by the month, but actually going like your electric oven, induction cooktop.
Yeah.
To really be able to get away, like for those on a bit more of a budget, they are still using a bit of gas with the ability to expand. But then those who are sort of like building a new home and just really want to deck it out, they're thinking electric because actually is sort of possible now too, which is pretty cool.
Well, that'd be interesting. Hey, like, because like Victoria's just banned, was it 2024? No more gas for new house installs. Like, I wonder how that affects off grid.
That's going to be really interesting.
Is it just literally is it the plum gas from the street, or like can you have bottled gas, or you don't know?
Haven't looked into it yet. I think it was literally come out like a week or two ago. I think they announced that. Like it's just a brand new thing. But yeah, I'll chase it up and get back to you. We'll have to chat again on here.
No, totally.
Let me come up to chat again. And actually, that's almost half an episode in itself because that's a pretty big sort of claim and statement from sort of higher authority to actually go and put that in.
Yep. Yeah. My thing's always been with gas, and like I've always sort of said to people, like, go get finance from a bank because it's more environmentally friendly to borrow the money from the bank than live on gas the rest of your life, and you're better off spending more money on a solar system and financing it. A lot of people do want to go off grid and be debt free and all that sort of stuff, but you've got gas to buy forever. Well, you're not debt free. And you're better off, getting finance, and it works out cheaper to pay finance than pay for gas for the rest of your life. And from an environmental point of view, it's a heaps better. Money's not real; it's numbers on a screen. You're not creating any carbon really from financing compared to buying LPG.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether that new change is actually like applied to bottled as well. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, totally. Do you ever think about that for the off-grid people? How's that going to affect off-grid stuff? Because it's all banned from new house builds in 2024.
Yeah, I'm interested to see whether that does sort of flow into like further from new house builds sort of through to existing. That would have to be like a decade-long sort of plan. I would have thought personally. But yeah, whether it goes that way, that'll be really interesting. It'll be something to definitely keep an eye on.
Totally. Yeah, no, definitely. So, all right, cool. Well, mate, so tell us a bit about look, some of the projects. I know you guys do, like us, you work all over the world. So tell us about some of your international projects. It's one of those things I think people don't realize in Australia, like Victron. I'm a huge fan of Victron. And maybe we can touch on that as well about using Victron in Australia and all the rules and regulations about, because there is a lot of confusion with Victron. Maybe let's start with that before we get onto the fun stuff about the international projects. So what's your opinion on the confusion around can you use Victron or you can't use Victron in Australia?
Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of misconception out there, even amongst installers, because you'll notice that even the 48,5000, the 48,3000, they're not listed directly on the CEC list for grid use. However, they still have the specific standard relating to that is AS 4777, sorry.
Yeah.
Which basically says it's basically related to inverters. And there is complete certification there and approval from all relevant parties to say you can do it. So the 48.3 and the 48.5 definitely suitable for on-grid use. And are approved anywhere except WA and SA pretty much. Vic, New South Wales, Tassie, NT, Queensland, like the rest of it will basically say yes. In terms of like your 8, 10, 15s, You can still incorporate it on grid. However, it would need to be through like either an ATS, an automatic transfer switch, or a manual changeover switch. Basically, because that's saying that they haven't got a couple of specific parts of the regulation. So all good for off-grid use, and the grid use, they're a little bit tighter on it because Victron needs to get the regulation there, or meet the regulation regarding that. So, but you can still have it fully off-grid basically, or fully on-grid. And that's what you can do through like that manual changeover or that automatic changeover. That's with the 8, 10, and the 15 model. Whereas with the 48.3 and the 48 volt 3 kVA and the 48 volt 5 kVA, you can have them tied into the grid with the grid charging it.
Yep. How awesome. And yeah, it's sort of it's disappointing, and Victron can be used in so many countries around the world, like Germany, the UK, but not in Australia. We have so many different rules and regulations, and I've always like DIY as an example. Like in the States, you can literally put your whole system up, have it installed, and then an inspector comes around and says, "Mate, it's safe to turn on." Like, you imagine if we had that in Australia, how much it would actually advance the industry. Like, I think by not having a system like that in Australia, we're sort of forcing people to DIY is a bad thing. You shouldn't be doing it, and forcing people down doing the wrong thing. Because we don't have something like that in the States, where, for some reason they think electricity is more dangerous in Australia than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, Australian regulations definitely are one of the strictest. With that being said, like it actually has led to with them being so strict, it's led to a lot of innovation from, I guess, like commercially, which is pretty cool. I think we were touching on it earlier, like about some of the cool things that Australia has done, like with the likes of Victron and incorporating it for like whether it just be residentially or whether it be commercially. There's been a lot of innovation there. It's now sort of going all over the world because like the level of quality is so high, and like I guess like the level of basically the standard that it is at, it has led to some really, really good results. And I guess safety all across the board. So it has its pros, it has its cons there, definitely. But yeah, it's definitely like led to some pretty cool innovation. Like as we were touching on earlier, the likes of your mining companies and whatnot are really starting now to take that on because meeting all their standards too.
Yep, no, totally. And like, Victron is fun. I wish we'd really hurry up and get the confusion out of the road, because it's to my opinion, it's the most powerful product available on the market. Like even just this week, they added that was, within the last week or two, they added that feature where you can only do your critical loads from batteries.
Mm.
So that's amazing for me, because my hot water was wired on the other side with the energy meter. So overnight when my hot water would come on, would literally dump my batteries into my hot water. So
yeah, that's cool.
So I really, in summer works great, because in summer we just have the hot water on during the day, but in winter we need it day and night to be able to get through. So mate, with a flick of a switch from Victron now, my hot water doesn't dump from my batteries, and I can just, charge from batteries or not charge from batteries, no electrician required or wiring, just by a push of a button. So
it's actually ridiculous, isn't it? Like what you can do from your phone or your laptop, it's so cool.
Oh, it's amazing. So, So I suppose with the innovation at high standards, it's probably led to a lot of the work that you and I do internationally. So, mate, tell us about some of the things, some of the jobs you've gone overseas.
Yeah, so we've done a fair bit in the Pacific, like New Zealand sort of region. But I actually had a call the other day from Mexico. It was an organization there, so they have a fairly unstable grid, and a lot of commercial companies over there, they do actually have like UPS systems. And the other day, I was basically like running through like the capabilities of Victron, because they're not really much into that market yet in Mexico.
Yep.
They actually never even heard of Victron. And we're like, wow, okay, because like Victron's in off grid, it's a household name here, right? Yep. Like everyone knows Victron. It's definitely like the market leader. But in Mexico, it didn't have much of a brand. I was explaining how like with the use of a Quattro, they're actually able to integrate both the generator and grid, and we can configure in a way through that ATS that you're actually able to you're basically able to have a generator in there for that, because they're mainly looking for UPS so they can keep their commercial operations running. Yep. And I was explaining how you can have a generator in there as well to keep the batteries charged up if the solar isn't able to keep up with it, because their loads were like basically 100 kilowatts. It was a fairly high load demand.
Yeah.
They're just blown away, man. It was actually incredible. They're so happy, and we're continuing to chat with them, but like they're so happy that there actually is an option out there to be able to do it, because some of the brands that we're using at the moment, they firstly wouldn't be able to take much of a load. There's some reasons for that too. And with sort of like the 240-volt hybrid systems, they weren't able to take much of a load, and they weren't able to tie in a generator either. So it was like you've got this short little burst of power available, and if it goes for any longer than that, they're basically stored period, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Like actually being able to share to the world like sort of the capabilities like a well set up Victron system can do. It's actually really, really cool because it just they were honestly blown away. It was wicked.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Like I've done some work in Jordan, and I've done a lot of consulting all over the world, and I'm at the moment talking with someone from the Dominican Republic. Yeah, Republic of Dominican. Yeah, Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
So, he's looking to buy a whole block of land, and it's part of the permaculture villages project that we're doing. So he's buying a huge bigger block of land. He's a business coach. And what he's actually looking to do is put a whole heap of houses on this community and build a community, and make it all off grid and all self-sufficient. So there's a lot of cool spots and lands over there. So so there's a lot of this going on around the world, and it's actually one of our members on our in our private community. He's actually from the Caribbean over there, or Caribbean, however you want to say it. And he's a Victron dealer. He does a lot of Victron and that sort of stuff. And I said to him, would you skip an island to go to a job? So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, we got a local installer over there close, which is good. And for me, like, I'm actually really interested in flying over and running a course over there and doing a face-to-face course and passing information. Because that's what I've done over the years for a lot of not-for-profits and charities and things like that, where we've gone to deliver a course, deliver a system. And one of the biggest things is that knowledge and education. And mate, like a lot of these guys that they don't even have power, it's like I remember in Jordan, when I was doing a job in Jordan, every young kid walks around with electrical tape, and all the ends of power cords are cut off. And so what they do, they spin the wires, they just poke it into the wall, and they'll actually just stick some timber in there so it fits in the power point. But before they do that on the other end, because all the ends are different, because a lot of people travel there and they got the European and German and all the different cords, the kids will actually just tape the power cord to it and then push it into the wall. So you've just got this suicide lead basically, which the kids just use timber, and you get 7-8-year-old kids that just know how to do it, So it's very different in these third world countries, and it's one of those things with Jordan as well. People say, South Australia's got the most expensive energy in the world. A kilowatt hour of energy in Jordan is worth about $5 Australian. So
wow.
It's pretty insane of how expensive electricity is there. And they live on brownouts all the time. Like the brownouts are that bad in Jordan. When I was in there running a workshop, doing a course, we're sitting in the course, the lights dim, but it's really hot, so the fans get slower because the voltage drops.
Yeah.
And so we'd actually stuck a multimeter in the PowerPoint when we're running the course to show the guys the voltage swings, and it would literally go up to 220, down to 170, up to 220, down to 170, and
it's moving around all over the shop.
Yeah. So I think people
it's different, isn't it? Like I mean, we really actually are so lucky here. Like we're the on grid, off grid. Like we did a fair bit of work in Papua New Guinea, and we helped out like Rotary International. Like, who like Rotary, they're sort of all around Australia here. You probably have them up your way too. We helped out with like a solar water pumping project there. And it's like this awesome photo. I've seen you the photo once we got off the call. Of like, there's a few kids like sort of next to the hose and the water's going up, and they're all like hands up in the air, loving it. Like, it's actually a really cool photo. Because like they don't have that over there, like compared to what we have. Like just turn the tap, whether you're on tank water, like whatever you're on, like turn the tap, and I'd say 99 point whatever, you're gonna get it out pretty quick, smart. Unless you're having issues, but that's pretty rare. Like, totally. It's a different world, isn't it?
Yep, it is, yeah. And as for us, I'd really like to take our kids traveling overseas to really see and understand and respect basically how lucky we are, what we've got compared to other kids around the world. So, it's definitely very interesting. But mate, with Rotary Park, I actually think Rotary was actually started in Lismore. I think I saw a sign the other day saying the birthplace of Rotary is Lismore.
Oh, wow. That's unreal. So, first interaction with Rotary would have been... They I don't know if they still do. I think they do. It was like they run there's like this public speaking sort of in accordance around this public speaking sort of thing, and like you'd hear a rotor when you're like 7 years old, 8 years old, down here anyway in Vic.
Yeah, I know them for the barbecues and stuff they put on everywhere. So
yes,
they were the barbecue before Bunnings took over.
Bring it back. Get into it.
No, that's it. So, yeah, cool. So, mate, so tell us a bit more about the commercial stuff. I'm going to bring up some of your commercial systems, because you guys do some pretty cool, just drop into place commercial systems.
Yeah, no, this has been like really, really cool. As we're sort of like, it's definitely something that's evolved over the past, I'd say, 3 to 4 years. Fellow named Lyndon, he's put an enormous amount of work. Lyndon, you met Lyndon over at Eldorado, really, really smart guy. Almost through his like electrical apprenticeship now and also electrical engineer, so super smart dude. And he's worked on that exact image there, like the basically the hydraulic powered solar array. That's completely hydraulic powered with basically batteries, Victron inverters inside, backup Jenny. So it's a full off-grid system that I can pick up, move to site, run accommodation sites, site offices, remote monitoring sites, whatever it is. So that's sort of one thing. Then like we also have like sort of fold out solar arrays where in like literally an hour and a half you can pretty much get 50 to 60 kilowatts of solar straight out, like just by using a tractor or similar to be able to pull it all out. That's pretty cool. That's another part. And then also those power skids too. They're like a brand new one. We're just starting to build. We have a few in production at the moment. If you go up a little bit more. So those skids there, I mean, see it just on the right. That was an example of one we've done recently, and the video is sort of playing it there. They're actually they're really, really cool. So I need to get some better pics there because we've actually, that was the design phase. Now we've started to roll them out.
Yeah.
But basically they're just on like a 20-foot container skid. They're basically the 3 rows of panels. They fold in through transport, the bottom row and the top row. And then just within sort of half an hour, you're able to get like instant power to site, which is pretty sweet.
Awesome.
And then you just have so you have your batteries inverter in the grey cabinet, then you have the generator to the right. If you do have a generator hooked into it, or if not, no stress. Depends on the loads and how much storage they have, whether they have enough storage to be self-sufficient without it. And the cool thing is they can actually just basically plug and play another skid, providing the solar charger has enough room for another 12 panels.
Unreal.
Yeah, so we're trying to engineer some of our own innovative solutions there, but to basically, I guess, combat the issue of getting power to remote sites. Like the biggest thing we hear is it's a kilometre away from the nearest pole. It's going to cost us X amount of dollars to do it. I need to actually try and find a way to get power there, and by using the likes of your container solutions or your skids, and you're able to actually get power pretty well anyway. Yep. Pretty sweet.
No, totally. Yeah, even look at the housing. I think the biggest thing in Australia that the cost of doing everything is just labor. We're very, that's why we're the lucky country. We get paid, per hour more than anyone else really in the world. So we're up there, and yeah, the more efficient we can be with building this stuff. I know we did it years ago. We stopped going to site. We started building everything in the factory, put them in boxes, and shipping it out and dropping off the site, because you just save so much time. Especially off grid when someone forgets something. It's normally a good 10-hour round trip. Sometimes they go back to the shop and get something.
and you're going up through the mountains too.
Yeah. So
through the mountains or about that much water.
Yeah. Don't talk about water around here, mate. Don't talk about water around here.
No, we'll leave that part out.
Scarred from water in Lismore, so.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. So is there anything else you'd like to add that sort of, someone that's thinking about going off grid for the first time in their journey, like where to really start and what sort of resources to look into?
Yeah, look, the first thing is just to know first of all, know what you're going to be using, basically in terms of your appliances. Know how you're going to heat the house, and I guess what you want to do, going back over that off-grid calculator. I was saying to you earlier, Mike, I really don't mind who uses the calculator, whether it's a competitor, whether it's someone who has no intent to actually buy a system from Commodore. But basically, just use it so that you have an idea of what you need. You're better off to know what you need, so you're not going to go and underspend and then get a really crappy system that you're not happy with. Or not, or in the case of overspend by 20, 30K, and then you've got another debt for however many months or years.
Yep.
So just use the calculator and then ask and research as much as you can. Like go into things like your podcast, go into things like your YouTube channel, which has plenty of really good info on exactly how Victron works, how AC coupling versus DC coupling works. We have like a 15-page guide as well, a 14, 15-page guide, which details some of that stuff in writing. That basically just tries to explain it in layman's terms, because there's so much information out there on the likes of your Facebooks and your social medias and different things. And not all of it is correct. That's a tough one, because that can really send you down the wrong path.
Yep. That's the biggest thing, I suppose. I sort of think I'm in a unique situation, because you see people on Facebook say this does not work. And I've seen that work in a situation. I've also seen it not work in another situation. So, having someone that's involved from a professional point of view and seen lots of different things, because, for most people, I know their intention, they've gone off grid, they just want to share their story and tell them what to work for them. And they're just only really sharing their truth and their reality because that's all they know. Where, someone like us, we've been involved in thousands of different installs over the years and systems, and you get to see it all, Yeah,
because it's all different most of the time as well. But there are some key crossovers from point to point. Like there's some key things that you need to look out for and know you need to do. So it's just about chat to as many people as you can. Like go out there and research from reputable sources, like you're going back to YouTube, going back to the off-grid calculator. Use evidence to find out what system you need. Don't guess. Use evidence. That'd be all I'll say.
Yep. And look, the reality with these days is you always say to people, put the biggest inverter in you can afford and fill your roof. Because really everything else you can fix later on very cheap and easy. To install a new battery, it's an hour at max, on a bad day. So if you fill the roof, put the biggest inverter you can afford, well, the rest is pretty simple from there, and you should be okay.
Yeah, you're spot on there. Definitely.
So awesome. Well, mate, thank you. Really appreciate your time. And
pleasure as always, mate.
Anyone wants to have a chat directly with Matt, down in the comments below, you better go to the Off Grid Tribe podcast and be able to interact with Matty and ask him some questions there. And if you're looking for a system, to help you in the guidance. So, mate, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Go on, mate. See you next time.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and found this content inspiring and informative. Make sure to subscribe to stay updated. Drop your comments below. And don't forget to like this content and share it around. Head to the offgridtribe.com to keep the conversation going. Together, let's embrace the power of sustainable living.